Thank you very much, Mr. Nagarajan, for coming to that event. And Ms. Mansi, thank you very much. Presenters, we have about 500 plus participants with over 2,000 people who have registered. We are very happy to have all of you here with us. Uh, we will now start the presentation. I welcome everyone to this event. And at this time, I hand over the time to Ms. Mansi.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua, sir. Good morning. First of all, I would like to wish you belated Happy Teachers' Day to all the teachers who are the part and parcel of this workshop. I warmly welcome Shri M. Nagarajan, sir, Director of Higher Education and CEO Scope. He is an IS officer of 2009 batch, Gujarat cadre. He is having 22 years of experience in various government departments. He is a great mentor and guide to Scope and Education Department. His vision has given a new horizon to Scope. Respected Joshua sir, our today's speaker, Ms. Raman ma'am, and all the faculties who have joined in this workshop. I welcome you all for this workshop for teachers assessment, organized by Scope in collaboration with Cambridge Assessment English, part of the University of Cambridge. Communication is the key in the classroom, and successful teaching highly depends on communication skills. As a result, a teacher should be proficient in all the four modes of communication: listening, reading, speaking, and writing, and should know how to utilize these proficiencies effectively in class. The most significant people in students' lives are their parents and teachers. These are the people they spend most of their time with the students. So it is very much important for teachers to make their communication effective to enhance knowledge of English language. This workshop aims to develop awareness on tools such as for describing and analyzing specific aspects of spoken language, for evaluating learners speaking, for identifying areas of strength and weaknesses, for developing speaking skills in class in order to prepare for the tests. I thank you all for joining this webinar, which will be very much useful in your teaching. I would like to share some information of Scope also. Since its inception, Scope and Cambridge are working together, and more than 6 lakh students gained its benefits. Scope has initiated many student-centric programs such as storytelling competition, debate, essay writing competitions, spoken English course, and various quizzes, which are crafted for students who want to improve their language skills. It's my humble request to all the faculties to motivate students to join Scope. And if you have any suggestions to improve us, let us know by sending your feedbacks. I thank you all for joining this workshop. Now, I would like to welcome Shri M. Nagarajan, sir, to share few words of encouragement to our faculties. Sir.
Very good morning to one and all present here. It is very heartening to note that this special workshop for teachers on assessment is being conducted today by Scope in association with Cambridge Assessment English. Today, this topic is very, very relevant for all of us, especially the teachers of English language, because mere teaching is not enough. We need to assess and provide proper feedback to the students and increase their levels of achievement in English learning. And the tools of assessment is going to help the trainers, the teachers, to easily, quickly, and properly assess the students and deliver corrective actions and support the students in learning quicker and in a very efficient manner. At the same time, the learning also can endure in the memory of the students, and it can help them in implementing the concepts learned in their day-to-day use of English and make it more useful for them in their life and in their profession. So today's session is timely in that. And Scope has been conducting various outreach programs for various stakeholders, beginning from college youth students to special focus course on women, even specialized course for housewives who are interested in improving their English as a language. And we are especially today focused on improving the capacity of teachers, because the teachers are the medium through which the English language and the opportunities created by it will be delivered to the students. I am glad to see that today's speaker, presenter Uma Raman, is a very experienced person with a lot of experience in teaching English and also creating content, and also doing many workshops. And she's very knowledgeable and resourceful person. And on behalf of Scope, I am thankful to Cambridge for bringing in such wonderful and eminent resource persons for the benefit of teachers of Gujarat. We all know that learning is a two-way process. So the kind of assessments that we are supposed to do should be two-way, and there should be an involvement, a mental and physical involvement for both the teachers and the students. And we are looking forward to working with the teaching community of Gujarat, especially government colleges, grantee colleges, self-finance institutions, and anyone even doing the freelance teaching of English, especially for our youth. We are looking forward to working in close collaboration with them and increase the availability of training to each and every student, and make them empowered to face the challenges of life. Today's youth want to emigrate to various Europe and Western countries, and they are aspiring to write exams like IELTS and TOEFL and various other English assessments. And our interventions, we hope, will be more useful to the students who are not having access to these facilities in their areas, especially who are living in non-metro areas in other districts of Gujarat, and even interior areas and tribal areas of Gujarat. We wish that they will be useful for the teachers to support their students in their area. And we are seeing a lot of encouragement in the participation of quizzes, various competitions, and other outreach activities that Scope is conducting. I am hoping that these activities will continue, and the participation of you people is what inspires our team to keep further innovating and delivering effective programs that will be of help to everyone. With these words, I welcome all to this workshop and congratulate Team Scope, and also thank the Cambridge English Assessment team for supporting us in all the ways possible. Thank you very much, and all the best for the workshop.
Yeah. Thank you, Nagarajan sir, for your kind words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nagarajan, for the beautiful present thoughts. I mean, as always, it's been a pleasure partnering with you and and the team in Gujarat. And I can only tell the participants that Gujarat government is a very foresightful government, or your team is very thoughtful, because right now I sit in Madhya Pradesh, in Mumbai. The Mumbai government, I'm talking both with the Commissioner of Higher Education Mumbai and the Commissioner of Higher Education Madhya Pradesh, and both of them are trying to copy your model. So you have set a benchmark that needs to be emulated by others. So great. We're very proud to be working with a team like yours, the Scope team, and very, very happy that we could be doing such things in this market. So let's hope that this relationship stays on, sir. Ma'am, I think I have Uma Raman ma'am with me right now. Uma ma'am,
Hi.
I'm okay, ma'am. I'm not. Uma ma'am is one of Cambridge's main presenters. We call her RTL. She is the regional team leader. So she actually supports in creating speaking examiners. I'm sure you all have heard of IELTS, and there are many exams that we have like IELTS. So Cambridge exams like IELTS are the speaking examiners are trained by ma'am, and ma'am monitors them on a regular basis. So ma'am, when it comes to speaking examiners, I don't think Cambridge could have found a better resource than Uma ma'am to talk to you about assessments. Uma ma'am is with us today. She is been a teacher. She has traveled all parts of India. I will let her do all the other talking, but as far as I know, she's traveled all parts of India. She has been there and she's taught in many parts of India also. So that way, she has had the connection of working with students from across India. So without wasting your time and mine, I will hand this over to Uma ma'am to do the introduction. And Uma ma'am, I'll bring up the presentation in a little while.
Hello, everybody. A very good morning to you all. I hope you can hear me. assessments, in general, it depends on how you look at it. It can be very easy, it can be very difficult, it can be challenging all the time, sometimes very straightforward. For example, when you correct a mathematical paper in the young, when children are growing up and you've given them some problems on tables, multiplication tables, let's say 6 into 7, all that you're looking at is the answer. All the children who've got 42, you just put a tick. Those who don't get, you put a cross. You're not really worried about how they've arrived at the answer, whether they remember, nothing of that sort. It's a very straightforward way. Unfortunately for us, assessing English language, or any language for that matter, is not so straightforward, because language acquisition and language production has an element of cognition in it which cannot really be shown. It's not visible to us. We only come to know about it when the results are there. So for example, you go to a railway station and you want to find out which platform your train is coming, and you go to somebody and you ask him you're in Gujarat, you ask him in Gujarati, and that person turns around to you. He knows what you're saying, even though he doesn't understand Gujarati. And he says, punch. Now, you've understood it because he says punch and it's 5. You go to platform 5, you know that he has understood what you have said. But if you go to platform 5 and you see something else there, at that point of time, you realize that the man you asked did not understand you. So you have to backtrack and find somebody else who knows what it is. So what do you, initially you would have said, oh, that man understands language. And then later on you'll say, no, he did not understand what I told him. So just assessment of speaking is very challenging, and that is what we're going to look at today. Before I ask Joshua to go to the next slide, can you all just put down in the chat, if it's possible, what are some of the things you find challenging in assessing speaking? What do you find challenging when you're assessing speaking? Just put it, whatever comes to your mind.
Chat. The chat is open.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah, the chat is open. People can type.
Just put down what you think you find difficult in assessing speaking, if you are assessing speaking.
Pronunciation is one thing.
Okay. Right. Pronunciation. Okay, that's quite understandable. I've got only 2 people and both have said pronunciation is difficult. What else is difficult? Others? You all don't have anything to say, or if you find nothing difficult, say so. Say nothing is difficult.
You have 2 pronunciations.
Yeah, only 2, and there's nobody else who said anything.
No. And then there was somebody who said the tone or something like that.
Oh, I haven't got that.
I think it was just running fast at that point.
The perspective of the listener, okay, pronunciation and tone, which comes to the same understanding of the receiver, right?
Lack of vocabulary is there.
Okay, dialect.
Accent.
So here we have. Right, okay, good. Keep all this in mind because we will be looking at most of this later on today. Now let's go on to what we're going to cover today. Today's seminar, hopefully, we'll become a little bit more aware of the assessment of speaking across the CEFR scales. For those of you who are not conversant with the full form of CEFR, it stands for, anybody who knows? Right, most of you have got vocabulary. Good morning. Yeah, that's right. You'll all have. Right. It stands for Common European Framework of Reference. And we're going to talk a lot about that and see if we can understand something more about it. And we're also going to look at the Cambridge English Speaking Assessment Scales. Now, second thing we are going to look at is how useful are these scales going to be for you when you assess your students in speaking. Now, before I go on to the next slide, how many of you think your own spoken language, okay? We are not here to test, but if I asked you to assess your own spoken language on a scale of 1 to 5, where would you put yourself at? Would you say 5? Would you say 4? Would you say 3? Just put it down. Your assessment of your own spoken language. Where would you put it down? Yes, language accuracy, lots of them. Okay, logical arrangement. Yeah, I can see a lot of things. Good morning. Where would you put your own level 3? So many of you have been very careful. Some of you have said 4. Some of you have said 4.5. Some of you have said 3. Some of you have said 5. Very good. How did you assess yourself? What made you give whatever you gave? What made you give that value? What made you give that value? What helped you to come to that? Anyway, just put it up. Those of you who put 4.5, 4, 3, whatever you have put it up, how did you arrive at this? There's one Dr. Jayesh, you have said 5, very good. Well, how did you arrive at this? How did you arrive at this? What made you give yourself that? By looking at a weakness, someone has said, right? Someone has said ease of communication. Okay, good. Thank you so much. Now, if someone else had to assess you on your spoken language, do you think you would get exactly what you have given yourself? Yes or no? Just write a yes or a no. Do you think you'll get exactly what you have graded yourself on a scale of 1 to 5? Yes or no? Okay, let me go ahead, because it would be very difficult, because unless you use the same tool for assessment, you cannot arrive at the same result. And so the tool which Cambridge has designed is what we're going to look at today. And you are going to find out how useful you think that particular tool could be for assessing your own students' spoken language. Okay. Now, obviously, we will also be looking at, if you identify somebody as, most of you said pronunciation and vocabulary. Now, if you find people who are weak in these two areas, what can you do as a teacher to improve on those areas? We'll look at a few activities a little later. Okay, I am going to go away. I'm not going to worry about that. Okay. Now, why is speaking a difficult skill to assess? And what problems are often involved when assessing speaking in a class? Tell me, why do you think speaking is difficult to assess? Right. Okay. I would love to have actually asked you to answer, but this particular platform, I'm not able to interact apart from through the chat. So let me just, I think if you don't agree with me, I need you to please let me know immediately. No, we don't agree to what you're telling me. Okay. Somebody has said we are not trained. Okay. Someone has said that volume, disturbing noise, very good. Fear, your fear or the fear of the student. So it could be both. You're afraid because you don't want to make a mistake in assessment. He's afraid because he's being assessed, right? Okay, because you feel you're not perfect in a grammar session, a lot of variables associated with it. Let's look at some of the problems. I think one of the reasons why speaking is one of the most difficult to assess, some of the reasons are given here. It is ephemeral. What does the word ephemeral mean? It just disappears. The moment it is said, that word just disappears. It's not there. We can't go back to it. It's not like a written task. When you have the written sheet in front of you, you come to the end and you said, what did he say at the beginning? And you can go back to the beginning and reread it. But you cannot do that when you're assessing speaking. It's lost. And then because it's not there, it's very difficult for you to analyze. And as many of you agreed here, there are too many aspects to assess while speaking. I mean, pronunciation is just one. And within pronunciation, somebody had said tone, which is correct. It's part of pronunciation. So there are lots of little features which make it very difficult to assess pronunciation. And in the same manner, to assess speaking. And then there is nothing right or wrong. So just now you'll have assessed yourselves, right? You have given yourself a 4, you have given yourself a 3, some of you have said a 4.5. Let's say some X person assesses you and gives you a 2.5. Who is right? You or the person who's assessed you? Well, there is no right or wrong answer. So then that is what makes speaking even more difficult. Unlike a scientific paper or a mathematical paper or facts and figures where answer is either right or the answer is wrong, you don't have that in speaking. It could be right, it could be wrong too. So what are we doing? So that makes it very difficult to assess speaking. And then you cannot assess speaking word by word or sentence by sentence. You have to look at the complete performance and then decide whether you think you will be able to do an assessment. For example, let me just give you a few a very classic example. So you ask somebody in class, where are you from? And the boy says, Vadodara. So, fine, good. You ask the next person, where are you from? And he says, I am from Mumbai, the biggest city in Maharashtra. You ask the third person, where are you from? So he says, well, I am from the north of India, one of the coldest places in our country. I am from a small little village in Himachal Pradesh. Now, all three of them, we are assuming their pronunciation is, you could understand all of them. But you give the first person who says Vadodara 3 for pronunciation. Will you give the other 2 also 3 or will you give more? Their challenge is there. While you've given the first guy 3 for pronunciation because Vadodara has been pronounced correctly, the other, he hasn't said anything else. You really don't know. He has only given you one word. While the others have said much more and you could make out that they seem to have a control over their pronunciation features. So that also makes it very difficult to assess the content, how much has been delivered. Is there enough language for you to do an assessment? So you need to do an assessment over a block, not just word or just one sentence, right? Would you agree that these things make speaking, assessing speaking very difficult? Just put a yes or a no or a thumbs up. Right, okay. So let's go on to the next one. Now, the practical problems, you are in front of the class. You know, I don't have to tell you. You have classes where you have so many students, and there's hardly any time for you to do a speaking assessment. So you rope in your colleagues, you say, you know, I have 20 students. Can you do part of the assessment? Can you do part of the assessment? So the students cannot even be assessed by one person because there are so many of them. And when you are assessing speaking in the classroom, when you call somebody and say, okay, I want you to recite a poem, the rest of the class, they're busy talking amongst themselves. They do this. However strict you are, you will still have these little whisperings going on. Then third, which is very important, is we lack confidence. We don't know how to develop a speaking test. We don't know how to develop the scale. And so we just go by gut. Oh, he speaks well. Or somebody comes and says, you know, he's a very good speaker. So whether he's a good speaker or not, because our X person has said he's a good speaker, he must be good. So whether he speaks rubbish or he doesn't speak rubbish, whatever it is, you just give him a mark. That happens to us many a time when it comes to speaking. And then we don't have a fixed benchmark to compare performances against. So just like today you all did yourself, what was the benchmark? What did you compare your performance with? Did you have a benchmark, or did you just decide that this is what I've get? Right, Dr. Lakshmikant Pathak, same to you. Wishing you all a very happy Teachers' Day. We should have begun with that. Right, thank you. Right? So we don't always have a fixed benchmark to compare performances against. So then what are we going to really be looking at? How are we going to mark speaking? Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Cambridge assessment tools, which all of you can get hold of in the Cambridge website. So just to tell you, teachers, a little bit about the Cambridge assessment scale, which we're going to look at. Cambridge has an assessment scale for all the 4 skills. But specifically for writing and speaking, it's very, very useful to us, because if we understand the tool clearly, if we are able to make good use of that tool, then you have a ready-made tool which you can use while doing an assessment of your students in class. Now, the levels here which you're looking at, A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, I'll talk a little bit about the Common European Framework of Reference. Now, in Europe, because there are so many, just like in India where we have multiple languages, in Europe also people speak multiple languages. You have Spanish, you have French, you have Italian, you have Portuguese, you have English, you have Urdu, you have a whole range of languages being spoken there. So the teachers who were doing these language assessment wanted something which they could use for all languages. So a group of specialists sat up together, discussed a whole lot of things with a lot of research. They did a lot of research. Cambridge is known for it. They did a lot of research, and then they came out with something called the famous can-do statements. They said anybody who learns a language, it can be any language, for this much period, the beginning of learning a language, the student can do 1, 2, 3. The student can give his name. The student can say how old he is. The student can write his name. I'm just giving you examples. This is not exactly what it can do. He can do these things. So for each of the skills, they said this is what he can do. So they broke up those can-do statements into these levels. So A1 is the beginning level. Before A1 is the pre-beginner, little kids when they just start to open their mouth and start wishing. Then we come to the next level. A1 and A2 actually means the elementary level, the years when students are learning to learn a language. If we have to link it to our school system, from classes 1 to classes 5, the students should be here in the language they are learning, right? Then we come to what is called the B1 and B2 level, which is the intermediate level, a level above the elementary level. So here students are normally in classes 6 to 9, depending on what type of school it is, English medium, or if it's a Gujarati medium and you're talking of Gujarati, then it depends, but it's somewhere there. And the last two levels, C1 and C2, which are the proficient levels, ideally, by the time the student finishes, let's say 14 to 15 years of learning a language, is in maybe the second year in college, he should be moving up to this level. This is the most difficult of the levels. Most of the students in our area, in our country, when they come to college, and I'm talking of students who are coming in from different medium schools, and I'm talking of their level in terms of English language. Most of the students who come from an English medium school, when they get into college, they still seem to be hovering around only this level. Students who do not come from English medium schools, they come from other medium schools, generally you find them still at the beginner level. So these levels have got nothing to do with age. It has got nothing to do with class student is studying in. It all depends on the number of formal teaching he has had in that particular language and how much he has used that language for his communication. So these are the 6 levels. Any questions you want to ask me?
Ma'am, the participants can download the presentation, the handouts now. It's
right. So we are saying someone has said C1 and C2 is ideal for lecturer of English language or for the language. Yes, obviously, I would agree with you. Go ahead. What do you think? Your students, most of them, do you have any questions on this? Yeah, rural area students are weak in English doesn't mean, okay, I need to really tell you something. There has always been a link, and which is very, very absolutely wrong, to link language proficiency with the intelligence of the student vis-a-vis in other subjects. There is no link. The thing about English language is it gives so much of confidence to the students that even an average student in other levels suddenly thinks that he's very good, which is good. It's a motivation. It's a sort of an encouragement. But is there a link between absolute performance after they leave college? Yes, there is a link between how good a person is in language and his chances of working in a good multinational company and how well he does. His English language proficiency definitely makes a lot of difference. It's a different thing whether you agree with me or not. That we are not here to discuss that, but it's a fact. We have statistics to prove that this is so. So these are the 6 levels we're going to be talking about. Now, when you any questions here, I'll just give you all a minute. So all the messages which are coming, I don't know how it's linked, but right. Various competitions help students to improve their speaking skills. It depends on what kind of competition we're talking of, Ankita. We'll come to that. If you can just keep your questions towards the little end, we'll answer all that. Let me just, okay, here there's a question. A1 level is for what? A1 is the beginner level ratio. When a person begins to learn a language, he is actually below, like, let me ask you, how did you learn your mother tongue? When you went to school, didn't you have a lot of words in your mother tongue to speak to your teacher? You already knew quite a bit about it. You were already maybe more than an A1 level. But in a second or a third language, when you're not exposed to it, when you go to school for the first time, you're even below A1. Below A1 means that's where you are being asked to identify letters, you come to know about sounds and everything. Yes, Pankaj, you're right. The way we first learn a language is by listening. And that's how we learn, in our mother's womb. Why is it easy for us to pick? Why do we call it the mother tongue? Because when we are in our mother's womb, we are exposed to that language. And that is why that language comes so naturally to us. So there are a lot of questions like engineering students, what level of language, we'll come to all that a little later. But so this is it. Now, okay, as I told you before, assessing speaking becomes difficult because you're assessing them, and look at the 4 criteria. So you have to listen to grammar and vocabulary. You have to look at discourse management. Many of you had written there when I asked you what is difficult about assessing speaking, many of you had said logical order. That's where discourse management, that's exactly what discourse management means. Is the person who's speaking in a logical manner? Does it make sense? So you ask a student to describe a typical Sunday at his home, and he stands up and he begins. My mother cooks very well. So we have a very, very nice lunch. And I go to sleep by about 10 o'clock at night on normal days. But on Sundays, I go to sleep even earlier because Mondays I have to get up early. Now, don't worry about the grammar and all that. But did you see the disconnect in terms of logical order? It doesn't matter if he began with lunch. But if he had said, Sunday, the best part of my day is lunch we have around 2 o'clock. And then he goes on to talk about, there's a link. So that is what we call discourse management. The way a person organizes his thoughts to make sure that is, expressed in the manner which is most effective. Then we have pronunciation. Pronunciation is very difficult, and let me agree with all of you. If you ask me, I have been examining for I don't know how many years. If I let you know the number of years, you'll guess how old I am. I'm very old in any case. For me also, even today, I find pronunciation most difficult to assess. The reason why is, if you're assessing your own students, you can understand what they are saying. You're not really looking at the features of pronunciations. When he says something which is very clearly understood by somebody who comes from a Gujarati medium, you also say, I understood it. But that is not right assessment. When someone speaks English, you have to do the assessment as if you are a native speaker of that language. That is where the challenge comes in. We have to, get our memory completely removed out of all the influence of Gujarati, Marathi, Hindi, Tamil, etc. and see whether that boy or girl is speaking in a manner using the right sounds as per the English sound board, the phonetics, and then speaking. So it does, pronunciation is very difficult. I find it very difficult too, frankly speaking. And next we have interactive communication. Now interactive communication, why do we talk? I gave you one example right in the morning when we began about somebody in the railway station asking somebody about a platform. So what was a requirement for speaking there? So we speak to communicate or to get some communication. Remember, speaking is a productive skill. Just like writing is a productive skill. Both these skills you use for others to understand you. It is not for your own self. Unless you're keeping a diary, which is for yourself, but you are a reader even in that. In the other case, writing and speaking are productive skills. So you have to, yes, you have to communicate. You have to, the others should be able to understand what you are saying. That's the main reason why we speak. So that is interactive communication. Suppose somebody comes to you from Scotland. The Scottish people in England have a very difficult accent, even though they are native speakers. They come here and they say something to you, and you keep shaking your head and you say, oh my God, I better not tell him I can't understand him. But well, you can't understand him. You can't. So when it comes to interactive communication, for that guy, I would give a very low grade because I couldn't understand what he was telling me. So these are some of the things we need to keep in mind when we are doing the assessment. Now let's look at why. We will be looking at the scales very soon, which is your handouts. I'll just tell you that before you have a look at that. Now, why do we need a rationale for assessment scales? Why do we need... somebody said I'm not audible in between. Bharti, can you hear me now?
If anybody is having connectivity with hearing, ma'am, please press the refresh button on the top of your screen. There can be a connectivity issue from your side. Just refresh your screen and it will work. There's a tab on the top of your screen that says refresh. Just click on that. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So now why do we need a tool? We have a tool for everything, right? So when you go to weigh vegetables in the market, there is a tool the vegetable vendor uses to see whether you're getting the right weight. Similarly, when you want to, at home, when you want to measure liquid, you have your little cups and measure your liquids. You have little spoons in which you measure your atta. Similarly, we need to have for even language, if we have a tool. Remember, today language is a tool, is a skill. Let me put it like that. We don't learn a language for the love of language. Of course, there are people who, many of us, who learning the language because we love the language. But generally speaking, language is taught in schools for you to use it as a skill. So to be able to assess that skill, we need a tool. When you sit on a cycle, how do I know you know how to cycle? If you're able to get onto the cycle and bike without falling off for a distance, I'll say, he's now learned how to cycle. But if you keep falling off, I'll say, he's still not mastered the skill. Similarly, in swimming, if I put you down into the pool and you come up, you can't breathe and you can't, then I say, you don't know how to swim. So let me teach you. So these are skills. So similarly, language is in that the same criteria. So we need to have a tool. So to make sure that the tool links to the communicative language teaching, which is what is the kind of teaching language is being done in the last 2 decades, we need to assess them in their different competencies. So we need to have a scale for that. Second, definitely to make the assessment objective and fair. Somebody here asked me, how do we get a certificate for the exam? We'll come to that later, but I'm talking about the certificate. So when Cambridge gives you a certificate and says you are at level 3 in speaking, B2 in speaking, do you think it's fair? Of course it's fair, because Cambridge is known for its validity, reliability, and confidentiality. So you know that that is a fair grade of your particular speaking skill. And then we'll be looking at that, and I'll talk about the third point, to be able to give you a speaking tool which you can use from across the quality of your student. When I say quality is a wrong word, across the proficiency of your students. So you have mixed, most of us, I'm sure you all agree with me, you have class of mixed ability students. You have students who are very good in English, students who are very poor in English. So how do you use a tool which tells you exactly where they are in their proficiency? So this is the tool which we. So you can use the tool. You can mark somebody A2 in the same class. That same tool will be able to mark somebody a C1. Then to help provide a link between the Common European Framework of Reference, which is the can-do statements, and the Cambridge English Language Assessment. So please remember, Cambridge Assessment is always positive. It doesn't tell you what you cannot do. It will always tell you what you can do. It's a positive statement of your ability. So that is linked to the CEFR, which is the can do. CEFR comes out with only positive statements. At A1 level, you can do this. In A2 level, you can do this. In A3 level, you can do this. So this is how you. Any questions so far? Right? Okay. So next question. Next one. Yeah, I've asked you to, I would like you to open your handout. That's it. Okay. All of you, you have the speaking scale with you, right?
I'll try to
Okay,
zoom in a little.
Nilesh, I'll come back to you. Just a minute. Nilesh, I will come back to you. I agree with you that you cannot be speaking English all the time in your classes where Gujarati is the medium, because what you're saying will not be understood by the students. So you will have to do what we call a stacking system when teaching English, where initial few classes, we use a lot of Gujarati with a few English words. And when we use the English word, we repeat that English word in Gujarati. Till the children know when you say, for example, I don't know a Gujarati word for, so the word right. So you do it with an action and you also use the Gujarati word. But little later, you will go on to be able to use only English. So do it in stacking, do it in little bit. Please do not listen to, there is no, at one point of time when teaching a language, there was something called the immersion technique, where you only spoke English. From the time you entered the class, till the time you went out, you only spoke English and you insisted students only speak English. Students who couldn't speak English would not open their mouth, but you will force them to speak English. This is also another very good technique of learning the language. When you go to learn French at Alliance de Francais or any of those, or German in the Max Muller Bhavan and all, this is the technique they use. They will not use English. They will only use that particular language. Now, this immersion technique is very good when you have a very small group to teach. But when you have large classes, it becomes very difficult. So you use a mixture of their mother tongue and English to teach English. Right? Okay. So if you look at this assessment scale in your hands, which you have, you will find, if you go down, can you just lift this up a little bit?
Yeah, ma'am. Done.
Yeah. No, I mean this whole thing. Yeah, right. So you have, yeah, no. Go back there.
There you go.
Yeah, just stop here. If you look at A1, A2, B1, B2, then C1, C2, well, just go back to the top for 1 second of the headings here. Just a minute. Yeah. So you have, the first column is grammatical resource. The second column is lexical resource. The third one is discourse management. The fourth one is pronunciation. And the last one is interactive communication. Now, this is the top, right? This is as good as a native speaker. Then we come to C2 and C1. If you look at C2 and C1, it is only in this level, that is at the advanced level, that grammar and vocabulary, lexical resources are separated. The B1 and B2 level, both are combined together as grammar and vocabulary. Can anyone tell me why? You're all language teachers. Why is it at the intermediate and lower levels, grammar and vocabulary are combined as one scale and not separate? Yeah, okay. I don't know whether you'll have been able to understand what I'm saying. In B1 and B2 level, if you look at the assessment criteria you have with you, grammar and vocabulary is combined. It's one scale. But here it is two, grammar and lexical separate. Why is it separate at the higher levels and not at the lower levels? The reason is very, very important for you to remember, because at the lower level, students are still struggling to understand grammar and get enough vocabulary to express it. So we don't want to penalize them. It is when you do a lot of more reading and a lot of more listening and all, your vocabulary improves and your command over grammatical components become better. So it is only at the higher level that you have grammar and vocabulary separate. Otherwise, they are together. Can you come down a little bit, Joshua? Sorry. Okay. Now, if you look at A1 and A2, you will find there is nothing under discourse management. Because at this level, you do not expect them to give a discourse, to give a talk. They're only going to be using one or two words or maybe a very simple sentence. So discourse is not there at the lower level of the assessment criteria. So if you have a student in your class and you ask him to say something about his family, okay, and he says, Papa, Mama, me, one brother. Very nice. Very happy. Now pronunciation is good. There is no discourse at all. So he cannot be marked. You will only mark him for pronunciation. You will mark him for grammar and vocabulary combined together at that A2 level. So that description will fit A1. Look at the description in your assessment criteria sheet. You will find that it fits A1. So this is what this criteria refers to. Now, we've got the answer. What is not assessed at one level? We have said that lexical resource is not assessed at the lower levels, and we've given the reason for that, right? Now, if you go to your handout 2, I think it will be speaking assessment to confirm. Have you got your handout 2? Overall speaking assessment scales, have you got that with you? I want you to look at which two sets of descriptors are identical. Why do you think this is? How do the criteria change? What is not assessed? So let me just tell you this, because I think we're having problems looking at the assessment criteria. What
Page 7.
Cambridge does, let me use a whiteboard to show you. Okay? What Cambridge does is, okay, so they have A1 level. Okay? Then there is a ladder-like thing, and there is A2 level, and then a ladder-like, and then a B1 level. So it goes up like a ladder. Now what happens, if you look at the A1 level, there are 3 major bands. There are descriptors, and you're asking them to mark them from a scale from 0 to 5. Okay? So in this 0 to 5, you have 1, 1.5, 2, 2.53, 3.54, 4.55. Okay? So that's how it's marked. Now, if you look at A2, look at a descriptor for, let's say, pronunciation for A2. Right? Look at what is given there at A2 for 3, for score 3. Look at A1 level and look at score 5. You will find what you give 5 for pronunciation in A1 is the same as what you give 3 for A2. And when you go up to B1, what you give 1 in B1 is 3 in A2 and is 5 in A1. This is what is known as stacking levels. That's how Cambridge stacks. That means it's like a telescope. What I am goes up, what you're there goes up. So all the features should be there every time we go up in a language level. Right. Can you see my PPT now? Okay.
Yeah, ma'am. We can.
Right. Now, there were questions given, but we are not doing the assessment. What is not assessed? If you really look at it, is which level key. If you look at the handouts, the problem is going between handouts. That is the problem. Right. I don't know whether you've got that thing. It's called handout, overall speaking thing. The handout after that, Joshua, handout glossary of terms have you got? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, but I think Joshua sir is not in the meeting. I have to call him.
He's again gone back, and I don't want this. This is not what I wanted. Ooh. Okay, let me see. I can share this with you. I don't know how to share this with you. That is the problem. Otherwise, I can turn screen share on and... Can you see this on the screen? Can you... No. At least let's go back to our presentation. Where is he? Joshua.
Sir, ma'am needs you.
Joshua, get back to the PPT.
Ma'am, I have informed Joshua sir. He is connecting.
Yeah, but without the... Okay, have you got this? Okay, now if you, all of you have a handout with you all which has been given to you all, right? Have you been able to download the handouts?
It's still downloading, ma'am. People can download it. It will be at a pop-up at the bottom of the screen, and they can download it from there.
Yeah, but why is it that I'm not able, can I share my screen? Because then I can open out exactly what I want.
Yes, ma'am. You just need to click on the screen right next to the mic. There's
This
a
one, right turn screen share on. But when I do that,
it will tell you which window to choose. A pop-up will come.
It's not telling me anything.
It will say entire screen window.
No, it isn't. That's it.
Okay, just give me a minute. I will bring up the slides as a presentation.
Okay. Now, this is a glossary of terms which, as a teacher in class, you will find very useful to refer to. Now, when you're doing your speaking assessment, we already looked at the different criteria we're looking at, right? So there is something general which we'll come to when we are doing interactive communication. Don't worry about that. Let's start with number 2, grammar and vocabulary. What do we understand by grammar and vocabulary? Here it is. So we are looking at appropriate vocabulary. So when I want to describe a girl who's very, very pretty, and I say she's beautiful, I've used the right vocabulary. But if I say she's very handsome, now depending on what it is, you may say, nah, handsome is not the right word. You should say beautiful. So this is what we're talking about, appropriacy of vocabulary. Because handsome we normally use when we are describing men. Okay, or we use handsome for women who look and behave like a man. She's very handsome, you know. We don't normally say that. We say she's very beautiful. So that's what we are talking of, appropriacy of vocabulary. Next is flexibility. Now, suppose you're talking to me or I'm talking to you, and I find you're not able to understand what I am saying correctly. Do I have enough language to rephrase what I am explaining to you in easier terms? Do I have good language to do that? You teachers do it all the time in the class. When students find something difficult, you say, okay, let me make it easier for you, and you do it in an easier manner. Same thing with the use of language. Do I have enough language, control over language, that something which is difficult, which cannot be understood by someone else, I'm able to rephrase it immediately to make that other person understand? That is known as flexibility. Then we come to grammatical control. Now, this is something which in India, many of you have also written that grammar-based language learning is the best for our students. They love to learn grammar. But unfortunately, grammar is just one component. Grammar is important, but it is not everything. Now, when we talk of grammar control, as far as spoken English is concerned, this is very important for you to remember. Even if the person makes grammatical errors, is the message understood? So just like that example I gave you when you asked somebody to talk about his family, and he said, Mama, Papa, brothers 2, big one, one small. Now, grammar is definitely not there, but you understood what he was saying, right? So, are you going to give him a 0 or something else? We'll look at that a little later. That is what grammatical control means. Am I able to use complex structures? Can I rephrase? Am I able to use tag questions? All that comes under grammatical control. And then after that, we have range. Do I have a variety of structures, or am I using so you ask somebody to explain to talk about his day. He says, I get up at 6, I have a bath at 8, I eat breakfast at 9, I go to school at 10, I come back from school at 5. Very good. Not a single grammatical error. But he has absolutely no range. He only has one structure, that is the simple structure. So that is what range means, and that is also what forms mean. He only has the simple form. He doesn't know anything else. Then discourse management. Now, discourse management is where we are looking at what is the difference between coherence and cohesion. Now, cohesion is the gum. It's like gum, You take two things and put the gum together. That is cohesion. Coherence is the order. How is the order put properly? So when we talk of cohesive devices, what are the tools which help stick things together? They are words like in addition, moreover, also, consequences, coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions. All this comes under coherence and cohesion. So how much can he talk? Does he keep on talking one long sentence which creates problems for the listener? Or is he able to put it into short sentences, complex sentences, simple sentences? That's what we're looking at in stretches of language. Is it relevant? So you're asking him how good the weather is in Vadodara, and he says, oh, Vadodara is a beautiful place, it's got many buildings and all. The language is there, but he's not telling you what you want to know. So is that relevant? Is his contribution relevant to what is to be told? Does he repeat himself too many times? Does he keep repeating himself? Now, you normally repeat yourself when you're struggling to find a language, right? Now, if you look at this sheet, you will have terms for pronunciation, I'm not going to go through that, but you can have a look at that. Okay? And can we get this thing back on, the presentation? Hello? Right. Okay, now any questions on what we just saw? Anything you'll want to ask me? Yeah, so now you don't worry about the way criteria changes is, again, let me repeat myself. 5 at the lowest level. Suppose 5 says pronunciation is very, whatever, there's a descriptor at, let's say, at A1 level. At A2 level, this 5 is exactly for 3. And at the B1 level, it becomes for 1. So that is what this telescoping is. So there is an element of all. So when somebody is at C2, C2 has got all the components of all the levels from A1 to C1. That's why he is at the C2 level. Okay? Right. Now, I'm not going to be looking at this. Let's go on to assessing speaking performance. Now, if I play an audio, you have the assessment criteria with you, right? So if I play an audio, can you use that assessment criteria and tell me what level you think this person is at overall? Don't worry about pronunciation, don't worry about grammar, just tell me if you think he's at an A1 level or an A2 level, or you think he's at the B1 level or a B2 level. But you should keep the assessment criteria. What are the different assessment grades you will get You will get A1, you will get people in A2, you will get people in B1, you will get people in B2, you may get people in C1, you may get people in C2, and you may get, this is like a native speaker. Now, how challenging do you think it will be to use this descriptor in your classes? That is what I want to ask you. What of this descriptor will you find difficult? Will you be able to use the tool as it is? Or will require some kind of training to do that? No. So do you think, okay, have a look at that criteria first, spend a minute or two, understand it, and tell me which of the criteria you think you will find very difficult to apply in your class. Don't look at the easy ones. Which of that you think you will have difficulty in applying when you are assessing people on speaking? Yes, you have to be familiar with the tools. Training will be useful, fine. Which of that? Do you think all the criteria you'll have equal challenges, or some of the criteria will be more difficult than the other? Do you think pronunciation, keeping this descriptor in front of you, will be easy? Or do you think pronunciation will continue to be difficult? Interactive communication. Okay. No, Ajay Kumar, let's just stop here. This thing about it is a subjective matter. Yes, practice is required. Dr. Prakash, Jai Prakash, I'm going to just speak to you a minute about how Cambridge trains the examiners. How Cambridge gives the marks, because we have to benchmark ourselves with the marks given by Cambridge. Only then we can say we are marking to standard. The way we have Cambridge trains is every examiner, every person, ELT person who needs or wants to become an examiner with Cambridge will have to have about 4,000 hours of formal regular teaching according to the age group they are going to assess. Once that is done, they are trained very, very rigorously to understand the criteria and to apply it. They not only are trained, they have to certify, and they have to certify every year. Every year they have to go through retraining so that we are still marking to standard. The reason why it is done is very simple. If today I am assessed by Ravi Desai, and Ravi Desai is a trained examiner with Cambridge, he gives me a B1 average. He gives me 3 in a B1 exam. If Ashok Oza assesses that same performance, he should also be giving me the same grade. But if he gives me 5 or if he gives me 1, then one of the two examiners is wrong, or both the examiners could be wrong. They are not applying the criteria. So there is a repeatability. The same score should be awarded for the same performance by examiners across the world, not just in India. That is the repeatability, the validity of the test. That is why Cambridge tests are so rigorous, and that is why their scores are so valid. So it's like saying, in Cambridge I get a B2, or in my school my teacher gave me a C1. It is a B2 which is important because that's what the Cambridge is about. Okay. So now saying that, so there is no subjectivity in this. The subjectivity will get eliminated because you are applying the tools in front of you. If you don't have the tool in front of you and you say, I don't need the tool, I know, I'm very good in pronunciation and I know what grammar is, and you just give a mark based on something which tells you you should give this person a B2, you're making a mistake. You can't do that. You have to have the tool right in front of you when you are assessing. So assessing speaking performance in your, I'm not going to be doing this because this is what we were able to. Okay, now in case you all were wondering what this is about, let me please tell you, I would have played, I was wanting to play those little clippings. And the first clipping, Letitia, whose interview we couldn't hear, she, in interactive communication, we were only looking at one scale. In interactive communication, this girl gets a B1. And if you look at the criteria for B1 for interactive, you will find that she fits an absolute descriptor for that. So like that, for each of this, there is a reason why they have been given what they have been given. Okay. Now, yeah, no intuition. Okay, Mahendra, I'll tell you about intuition-based rating. You know, with a lot of experience, when you start using the tool, after a number of hours of using the same tool, immediately you will know. The moment a person starts speaking and saying, you will say, I think he's a B1. Then you can confirm your rating with the descriptor and you'll find your intuition-based rating happens to be correct then. But that is only after you have gained experience in using these tools for assessing speaking in class. Okay, so now that we have talked about that, any questions before I go on to the last bit? Those years of experience you can, sort of telescope into hours. So every day in your school, if you spend 1 hour on assessment, you will find within 30 days, 30 hours, you've become very experienced. So it all depends on how you want to use that in your own classes. So now let's go on. How can you do assessment and developing speaking in class? Yeah, so Badresh, you told me how to manage the application of rating scale when students are in large numbers. Then this is what I would recommend. Is it good or not? You'll have to try it out. What I normally recommend to teachers when they want to do an informal speaking assessment, I tell them to put their groups in their class into groups of maximum. The group should not have more than 6 students in a group. And you make 10 groups, 60 students maybe. And then you give each group 10 minutes. So 6 groups of 10 minutes is 60 minutes you need to do an assessment. You can do it in 1 day, you can do it in 2 days. Now take one group you want to assess. I have the names of all the 6 candidates in a table form in your page. Keep the assessment criteria next to you and give them a topic to discuss on. It could be a group discussion. It could be, they can talk about how the test match, the 4th test match between England and India, which is taking place. They can discuss the 3rd day's game. They can discuss the 4th day's game. They can discuss anything about it. Just tell them to talk, but insist that they speak only in English. Now, when they are talking, there are 2 things you need to keep in mind. Keep noting down mistakes they have. Keep noting down pronunciation, good things against their names. You'll also notice, put a cross every time a person talks. 1 cross the moment he says something. So you will find you have some students with 5 crosses because they've said a lot. There are some students who have not put a cross at all. Yeah, then you say, okay, Kirti, I want you to say something now because Kirti hasn't said anything. So you put those crosses. When you put those crosses, Once they finish for 10 minutes, at the end of it, before you go on to the next group, quickly give your assessment based on it. And then go on to the next group. This isn't the best, but it's a beautiful way of starting to develop assessments of your students in class for speaking. And it also helps students to become more confident in their spoken language. I hope that answers your question about how to handle assessments in large classes. How can you use this assessment? Now, let's say you've done the assessment. Let's say you're teaching class 6 students. Ideally, in class 6, by the time they come into class 6, if that is their first year of language, English learning, Mahendra, lots of mistakes will come across. I agree with you, no any, not any. There are lots and lots of such things they make, but we won't worry about that now. Let's see how it can help. This assessment helps us. So you're teaching class 6 and they have been learning English from class 3. That means they've learned English for 3 years. Minimum level those students should be is at A2 level. Now, if you have all the students at A2 level, no problem. That means you're doing a good job. Students are progressing as per what is expected. But let's say when you do the assessment, you find 20 of them at A1. My God, they are at A1, not A2. What do I do? Then you look at A1, why? Is it because of pronunciation? Is it because of grammar? Find out why are they at A1? Or is it because of interactive communication? If it's because of grammar, then start designing exercises which will improve their grammar. Look into your books, create speaking exercises which will help them. See, the problem with all of us, with you and me and all of us, they are very good theoretically. In fact, you know more about the theory of grammar than I would, because I've forgotten it. I only use grammar. I'm not studying grammar anymore. So similarly, with students, there is no point teaching them the rules. Make them use the rule. Get them to practice. So if they're making a mistake in singular agreement of singular subject and verb, give them a lot of sentences to practice it. So you can use the assessment criteria for that kind of thing. Right. So anything more before we really wind up? So some of the ways you can do assessment formally, informal, lots and lots of activities. Cambridge.org has got lots of support for you. There are so many activities you can do. It's really not, one of the things which I regret now, not that I've become old, the thing I regret is not going back to be able to go back to school and really start teaching again. Because for today, teachers have got so much of resources, so much, So you will have. So Karan is saying how to avoid inappropriate use of the word "the" in communication. It's a very, very meaningful question and a very difficult question to answer. But one of the things in class is you can use sort of a bell. So you ask somebody to speak. Every time they make a mistake using the, okay, this is something very interesting which I want to share with you. The problem with us English teachers is, especially in writing, you can use it for speaking too. When you start error correction, you want to correct all the errors. So at the end of a writing task, when you give the written passage back to the students, they have a whole lot of red marks in their books. You're very happy, you've done a very good, done your good job, you have used red ink, you have finished your refill, you have given all the mistakes possible. But for the child, it's going to make no difference. He'll look at it and Raman sir to aise hi karte hai, pure red mark dikhate hai book mein. He's not bothered about it. So to make your errors correction meaningful, you can do it in speaking too. Tell them, okay, students, today I'm only going to listen for pronunciation mistakes. And then when you make them talk, only note down pronunciation mistakes. And in the next class, take those mistakes and have a session only with those mistakes, correcting the mistakes. It could be sound, it could be stress, it could be phonemes, whatever it is. Do those corrections in class. Then say, okay, today I'm only going to look at your grammar mistake. Or I'm only going to look at your article, use of definite and indefinite articles. And then once you have this the coming up every time, take it as a classroom session. I have found this, personally speaking, I've done this kind of corrections. I learned it. I wish I could tell you it is my idea. It is not my idea. I learned it from one trainer who gave this thing about focus on one error at a time. And I found it so good, so useful. So maybe you could do that. Just take one aspect of speaking. It could be intonation, pronunciation, it could be grammar, it could be vocabulary, whatever it is, and only focus on that for that session. You will find other mistakes. Ignore those other mistakes. Don't focus on that. Right. Giving feedback is also a very important aspect of teaching, we teachers sometimes can be very cruel without realizing we are cruel. क्या विपिन हर बार यही mistakes करते हो? We say that. We say it so nicely. The student is used to it. Now, many of the students become thick-skinned. They are not bothered. They listen to it and go off. But some children are so sensitive. The moment you say that, they withdraw. The moment they withdraw, they have no confidence in you. The moment they have lost their confidence or affection for you, learning stops. So it's very important that kind of feedback you give motivates them to do better. And it depends on child, the personality. Some children you can call them and say, see, this is not nice. Can't you do it better? And he is willing to listen to you. With some you'll say, beta, I'm sure you can do this better. You'll have to change the way you give feedback. I know it's a very, very difficult task with such a large class. But please, teachers, you are the next century. The next lot of children who come up as adults are dependent on you. You are their guide. Just go ahead and do the best you can with them. I'm sure you'll do a wonderful job. Right. So these are some of the free resources which are available for teachers. Please make it a point to go through them. There are some wonderful resources here. Lesson plans are there, activities are there. You will find the assessment criteria. You will find sample videos of A1, A2, B1, B2, which I wanted to show you. You will be able to see that. You can see all that. Teaching framework, your own. All of us want to, most of you, I'm sure, are very young. And you have a long way to go in your profession. And you're always looking for, how do I develop myself professionally? What can I do to develop? Just doing exams and tests is not professional development. You may want to do some course. You may want to conduct a course. You may want to do a lot of things. There is a teaching framework which is there. Go have a look at that and see what you would like to do. Get in touch with Cambridge. Get in touch with Joshua and tell him, this is what I want to do. Is there any suggestion? And he will definitely get back to you with something very, very useful. Here are some addresses which you can get. Website is here and important information about exams is given there. Have a look at it. Okay, any questions? I need to thank you all for being patient with me. Yes, I enjoyed my session. Any question, please don't hesitate to ask. Okay, what are the various methods to make students competent in speaking English or management studies? Now, why management studies? If you make them competent enough to speak English, they'll be competent anywhere. So this is a problem with us. We only want to make them focus on certain aspects. I'll tell you one of the very big challenges we face. You will realize it when you are assessing is that students learn by heart and come. They will learn passages by heart, and when you ask them, okay, talk to me about your favorite picture, they will tell you beautifully because they've learned it by heart and come. Then you start asking questions about their opinion. Why did you like it? What made you feel so sad and all? They will have no language. So, learning by heart is a good thing. It does improve language because you learn chunks of language by heart and it stays there, and it's very good. But in a longer thing, learning by heart and just coming and giving it in a test is not. So when you say language for management students is make them do a lot of group discussion, make them listen to their recordings, tell them to identify their own problems. Don't identify their problems. They are big enough. Tell them, now you tell me, what do you think you did wrong? Let them identify it. Once they identify their own errors, they will then come back to you and say, sir, can you please help me to improve my pronunciation? Can you please let me improve my grammar? And then you can take that aspect and give them activities to improve that. Yes, I really hope it's been informative and more informative. I hope you are taking back something from this, something useful from this particular session. Yeah, you can stop sharing the screen now.
Right, ma'am. Sure.
Fillers are used in speech. How to get rid of it, Ravi Desai, is just to build their confidence. Fillers are sometimes a natural extension of a person's personality. Many of, like I just said, it's a stock thing which we don't even realize we are using it. So as long as those fillers do not detract from communication, just forget about it. But if someone is using the fillers, struggling to find words, he doesn't know which language to use, then you need to look at and give him some sort of activities where he reads poems or he recites poems, without a stop, just to improve his fluency. I mean, that's just one of the things. There are lots and lots of things which we can do, but this is just something which just... Any other questions? Sanjay, I really hope your skills have been upgraded in this short time, but thank you so much for telling me that. Right, there are people who are eager to attend the next webinar. Very good, that's nice. Okay, Ravi, you said and to take a pause in between the speech is a good thing. Of course, it's a good thing. We normally take a pause to take a breath, right? We have okay. Now, this is a very interesting point you brought out because I'm going to link it to the Indian languages. Most of our Indian languages, whether it's Tamil or Telugu or Malayalam or Gujarati or Marathi, there are no pauses. We speak. Now, when we speak like that in English, nobody can understand because English is a stress-based language. So if you don't have pauses at the right time, your intonation at the right places, stops at the right places, people don't understand what you're saying. Are you asking a question? Or are you making a statement? Are you getting angry with me? Or are you saying something nice about me? All this will not be understood if you don't have pauses at the right. So you do need to have pauses. Okay. Anything? Is there was in the morning, I saw one person named Ashok Oza. I don't think, is he still here? There is a Ashok Kumar Yadav, but there was an Ashok Oza. I just wanted to ask him if he is related to one of the family, Oza family, whom I'm very close to. Okay, never mind. Doesn't matter. Thank you. And anything else? If you have any questions on today's session which has not been clarified, please do free to write to Joshua. He will pass it on to me. So there is one question here. Navodita has asked, what are the backbones of ESL online assessment. Can you sort of explain what you mean by backward? Are you asking me what is the criteria for online assessment? Is the same. Whether you do an online assessment of speaking on online, you listen to it and do an assessment, or you do a face-to-face assessment, the assessment criteria remains the same. The difference is, in an online assessment, you do not deliver the test. The test is delivered. Someone else asks the question and you give the answer, and that's recorded and sent. But in a face-to-face, I act as both the interlocutor and the assessor. So I ask the question, well, where are you from? How many years have you been studying? I'm asking the question. When he gives me the answer, I'm also doing the assessment. That's why in Cambridge exams, you always have two assessors. One who does the interlocutor, who asks the questions. I'm also assessing, but I'm assessing you overall. And then you have another person who's doing individual criteria assessment, who's just listening. So that is the backbone. Now, Udita, I hope that has answered your question. One last question. Can we make students use English compulsory in the course? Will be, you know what, I think this is a very good idea if you can make it compulsory, but then human nature says the moment you make it compulsory, they don't want to do it. So you have something called rewards and this is something I used to do in my English classes in class. Every time a student used a word in another language, he would contribute 5 paise. It would go into a kitty box. 5 paise is quite a bit for students, sir. So every time, so the moment I used to hear, and it became so, people became so interested in it. Students used to start saying, Geeta, you use Hindi word, 5 paise, 5 paise. Oh, Nilesh, you use Sanskrit, you use whatever word. So people would start. So you can use that and you'll very soon find two things will happen. One is you'll have lots of 5 paises, which you can use to buy chocolates for you. Right. I don't think there are any more questions. We can end up. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And before we conclude the session for today, I would like to wish all of you a belated Happy Teachers' Day.
Me
And
too. I'm also a teacher.
right, ma'am, right, ma'am. Including you, definitely, yes. And a big thanks to Mr. Natarajan, the Commissioner of Higher Education, and Ms. Mansi Saraswat, the Joint Head for Scope. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to conduct this workshop. Thank you so much, Uma ma'am, for the wonderful session. And a big thank you to all the participants for taking out
Yes.
time to attend this session. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mansi.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.